It's the top five. It's the quarterfinals. It's soundtrack of my life night. It's all of these things. It's the Masked Singer season 13. Let's talk about the quarterfinals. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, and welcome to my recap and reaction video for The Masked Singer Season 13. We are in the top five, and I thought that there was only going to be this and the next episode, so we would have like a double elimination tonight. Nope, that did not happen. Five become four, and this is just the quarterfinals. So next week, we'll have the semifinals, and then the week after that, May 7th, I think is the date, will be the final episode, and I'm guessing there will be three involved in that because there's going to be four next week. Well, unless they eliminate two next week, I don't know. Every season they do it a little bit differently. But for now, we've got the top five, and only one is going home. So we'll talk about all of this here in a second. But first, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a Dan Reviews It subscriber, thank you so much for that. I love it when you guys come back and check out my videos. And the Masked Singer content is specifically known for its comments. Love hearing from you guys in the comments below so we can figure out together who is under these masks. And I think we've got a handle on all five of these people that are left. And I think only, boy, are any of them my initial guess? No, I get, yes. Boogie Woogie, I think, is who I said it was originally, but everybody else is not my original guess, including the one being sent home tonight. So please keep in mind that I would love for you to subscribe and click that notification bell too, so you get the alerts for all my video drops. I don't do just Masked Singer content. I do a lot of movie and TV stuff on the channel. All right, so much like last week, boy, did I fill up. This is both pages here of this notebook. I just wrote and wrote everything that was going on in this week's episode. And yeah, we started off with More Than a Feeling, a group sing with Coral, Nessie, Boogie Woogie, the Pearl, and the Mad Scientist Monster. They all sang More Than a Feeling together. And that will be the last time on the same stage because one of them, of course, will be sent home. Before we even got to the singing, we had Detective Lucky Duck coming out and saying one of these artists stole something from Robin. And Jenny was thinking, oh, maybe somebody knocked him out of the number one spot. It's possible. I also thought, though, especially with some of these names here that I if I'm right about who was under the masks, is it possible that maybe Robin was nominated in a category at either the Grammys or the American Music Awards or whatever for a certain category, and this person beat him in the category. Now, I wouldn't necessarily consider that stealing something from Robin, but so, you know, maybe Jenny is right that it was a first place on Billboard or something, you know, the number one spot that week. Maybe somebody stole it. I don't know. But there's certainly a couple of possibilities with that, I think. All right. So first up was the Coral. And she said, so for each singer this week, we have a little bit of an intro from the Masked Singer themselves, and then we throw it to a loved one or someone very important to them in their life, and they kind of fill out the rest of the clue package. So the Coral said, my soundtrack is Avril all the way, so here's my favorite skater boy, and he's probably yours too. And this person said Coral's name, and they're all, you know, they've got their masked hood on and everything. He said, Coral's come a long way since we joined forces 6 years ago. We first met at a huge audition, and we were both nervous. And we see lilies, like a bouquet of lilies at that point. He said we had to do a chemistry read, and part of that was knowing or was having to stand really close together and staring into each other's eyes. But we became instant BFFs. Got the parts and changed our lives together. And we see a one of those movie clackers that says musical on it. And then that's it. She sings Skater Boy, which she obviously alluded to. And so afterwards, Nick just sort of is asking everybody random questions, and he asked, you know, who else other than her BFF has been there for her, and she said, my parents have been there for all the good and the bad times. Okay, who's hasn't? Like, that's, you know, that doesn't tell us anything. Rita was thinking it could be Hilary Duff, keying off of the Disney clue from last week. And following that logic, Ken thinks it might be Ashley Tisdale. And that is someone who has been guessed, I mean, if not every season, just about. She is one of the classic Masked Singer guesses. And I believe that she was a panelist on Ken's show, I Can Hear Your Voice. And I was she maybe on one of his shows too? I forget, like one of his sitcoms. But she at least did that. And then Robin, I think this is the first guest for this season, but here's another name that comes up a lot: Nina Dobrev. And he mentioned the lilies being a flower. She was in Perks of Being a Wallflower, and he had connected a couple other clues there. But I'm with you guys thus far with Meg Donnelly. That is a name that I was very unfamiliar with. I've said this before, but you guys put me on that train of thought, and sure enough, all the clues keep matching up. She was part of the Zombies series on Disney, and Rita, she said that her and Rita are part of the same family. Rita was in the Descendants movies, or at least one of them. But there is even, a closer connection there. The Zombies Descendants tour that is going to be happening in 2025. So musicians and singers from both of those franchises are going to out together. So that really connects Zombies and the Descendants. So I think this is Meg Donnelly. All right, up next is Nessie, and this is actually who went home in a surprise vote for me. I did not see this coming, but so we'll do the clues for Nessie and then go right to the take it off. But Nessie said, one person has really influenced the soundtrack of my life recently, my daughter. So we see his daughter there, with her mask and everything. And she says, I'm really impressed that my dad has made it this far. Maybe it was all those high kicks. Sometimes he's expert level cringe, always posting on socials. And have you seen his music videos? I almost died when my teacher played one in front of the whole class. And we see a digital alarm clock that says 3 o'clock. Robin pointed out that might be Matchbox 20, 3 a.m. He said, while there's a million things, or she said, while there's a million things he does that are eye roll, there's also a million reasons why he's the greatest. He makes the best milkshakes. He always helps with homework, and he taught me how to drive a tractor. And her sort of saying "million reasons" leads into the song, which is him singing the Lady Gaga "Million Reasons." And then afterwards, Nick kind of just asked him, what it's like being on the stage here, and he said, "I did this for my daughter because she'd either think it was funny or cringy." So the guess is actually Jenny, I think, changed her guess because here she says Uncle Cracker, but that's not who she says at the end. But we also see at some point in the clue package a mail bag, like a sack of letters kind of thing. All right, and so once we realize that the one being sent home is Nessie, and there's no, just like last week, there's no sing off or battle royale or anything like that. They just did a vote, and the one with the fewest votes went home. But Nick did point out this was the closest margin in Masked Singer history. That is over 13 seasons of the show. Less than 1% of the vote was between the person going home, Nessie, and whoever the fourth place person was. Less than 1%. I have my thoughts on who that might have been because I am shocked. I actually thought Pearl was going home. And I thought that was a pretty easy decision, too, if I'm being completely honest. I thought Nessie did a great job. Look, I got to be honest, the song choice wasn't great, but maybe his daughter is a huge Gaga fan, and so that sort of got him on that train of thought for Soundtrack of My Life. I don't know. But even for Gaga songs, that's like the 19th best Gaga song. You could have picked a lot of other ones. You and I think his voice would have been really suited for, but whatever. Maybe it was a bad song choice that led to his elimination. But of course, we get the clue case before the final unmasking and the guesses, and it was a Celtic knot. And he says this symbolizes eternal love, something which heavily influenced my career. Okay, so look, we get it. There's a bunch of love song, clues. That's been by far the biggest thing that he keeps hitting. Love songs. People have danced at their weddings to it, and one of the great love songs of all time, blah, blah, blah. We've heard this over and over again. So the guesses from the panel. Now, Jenny, like I said earlier in the broadcast, she said Uncle Cracker, but she changed it to Johnny Resnick from the Goo Goo Dolls afterwards. And I think that's a much better guess. And again, in this sort of vein of the late 90s, early 2000s, the TRL era, and this person said, oh yeah, I was battling for TRL slots against the likes of NSYNC and some of the other boy bands. Goo Goo Dolls were absolutely right in that pocket. Their biggest hits came in like 98, 99, Iris, Slide, Black Balloon. All of those were, probably TRL staples. All right. Robin said Edward McCain, who he said last week. And he said that there was a Bumblebee clue earlier for I'll Be. They keep talking about the love song. Obviously, he's got I'll Be as a major love song. No one has pointed this out on the show yet because I guess it sort of came and went. It's certainly not as enduring as I'll Be, but I Could Not Ask for More was also a minor hit at the time that was all over adult contemporary radio, and I'm sure played at a lot of weddings at the time. Rita said Dave Matthews, who she had said a couple of times so far this season. And Ken, well, he went on a new path this week. He said it earlier in the broadcast when Nessie sang, and he said it for his final guest, John Popper from Blues Traveler. He made a couple of, thoughts on that. There was like a fishing hook at some point, like a hook line. But look, Blues Traveler predated TRL by a good bit. Their biggest hits were in the mid 90s, certainly not the late 90s. Yeah, they're still, a band and touring and everything, but had long fallen out of favor with the MTV crowd by that point. So I have to give that a pass. Look, this is Edwin McCain. And you guys were on that pretty quickly in the comments. My initial guess, I was torn between Rick Springfield and Daryl Hall. Ken and Robin both thought they heard Daryl Hall in the vocals. But I don't know. A couple of other things led me to believe it might be Rick Springfield. But then in week 2, all of those TRL things and oh yeah, I was facing up against NSYNC and the other boy bands on TRL. I'm like, well, that's clearly not Rick Springfield or Daryl Hall. So where are we going here? And you guys in the comments had said Edward McCain. That made sense to me. The vocals certainly make sense to me on that one. I believe this is Edward McCain. If it is, I'm sure he's going to sing I'll Be after he's unmasked. But let's go to the Take It Off. And do we have another winner here with Edwin McCain? Robin usually actually doesn't get it right, so I'll be surprised. It is musician and singer-songwriter Edwin McCain. I can't believe Robin got one. Robin literally never gets them right. He missed his own neighbor, Brian Austin Green, and his childhood friend. Edwin McCain's got a lot of good songs. We're talking about a couple of specific ones, but Solitude is a great song. All right.
Such a good time. Thank you for having me.
That's cool that he did it for his daughter, too.
To life, every performance. I mean, tell us about becoming Nessie. I got to tell you right now, I actually got distracted while singing one of the songs because there was a bead of sweat that started at the back of my neck, and it started going all the way down, and I started pulling for it. I was like, come on, little buddy, you can make it. And then it went all the way down into my shoe, and I was like, yeah.
And apparently he does, like, these funny online videos. All right, well, if he sings I'll Be, we can't play that here because of copyright, whatever. But my guess is, all right, shut up now. Oh, here it goes. Wait, the Celtic Knot is special to Edwin. It appears on one of his album covers, and he has a tattoo of it. Okay. All right, well, he's probably going to sing it. So let's move on. We have 3 left. Boogie Woogie, Pearl, and the Mad Scientist Monster. Boogie Woogie is next. This is who I believe should win this competition. It doesn't always work out that way. Sometimes the song choices lead us astray, and sometimes the stories, are more heart-tugging in one way or another. But he's talked about how he lost his mom and how special she was. That's obviously an important thing, and we talk about that again this week in the Clue Package. So I do think he has a good story, too. But in terms of just the performances and the vocals, I think Boogie Woogie deserves to win this. We'll see in a couple of weeks, I guess, what happens. But he said, I wouldn't have made it here without my wife. So we go to see her, and she says, I have a case of disco fever watching my hunky husband, and he's truly having so much fun. It's my biggest hope for him because I remember how hard he took the loss of his mother. I'd never seen him so low, but he channeled it into his songwriting, and he made some of the most inspiring hits because of it. He's inspired my music, too. And then at that point, we see a platinum record next to her, kind of in like a glass case. She said he'd never mention it himself, but his work has helped so many process their own grief, overcome illness, and even saved their lives. He is a light for many. And then we see a briefcase with the word super suit on it. Now, is that an allusion to the Incredibles movies? I don't know. But he sang Golden Hour by JVKE. I don't know if that's supposed to be pronounced Juke, and the U is just like a V. I've never heard the name of this artist out loud. I've only seen it on Spotify, so I don't know. Is it JVKE or is it Juke? I don't know. You can tell me in the comments. I know I'm an old man at this point, but all right. So let's see. So he asked, or Nick said, what does that song mean to him? Whatever. And he said, this song reminds me of my wife and when we got to sing at the White House. So that is a big clue that this person has performed at the White House. Knowing the era of who I think is under the mask, it would make sense that it would be an Obama White House at that point in time. And perhaps he was singing one of his uplifting numbers. And Robin thought it was somebody actually known for a down-tempo number, Bad Day. He guessed it might be Daniel Powter. Rita thought it could be Charlie Puth. I think that's the closest guess we've gotten yet, because Charlie Puth and the person I think it is do seem to have kind of dovetailing hits. Whenever one releases an album, it seems like the other is releasing an album. And Charlie Puth is also known for some upbeat, up-tempo numbers as well. There's been a theme with Boogie Woogie of like happiness and joyfulness in his music. And then Jenny thought it might be Brandon Flowers from The Killers. And she was so obnoxious about it too. She was like, "Oh, there's this band called The Killers." Yeah, we know who The Killers are. Like, they have a ton of hits, and you've guessed Brandon Flowers before on the show, so that bothered me. But anyway, I don't think it's any of these people. I think it is Andy Grammer. I have been saying that since the beginning. This is the one remaining first impression guess that is left for me on this stage. Everybody else, I guess somebody different. But I've been on Andy Grammer with this since week one. The vocals is what was doing it for me that week, because I couldn't pick some of the clues up and relate them to him necessarily. But as the weeks have gone on, I've been able to sort of associate more. But vocally, especially this week, man, did it sound like Andy Grammer. And nobody has guessed him yet. But I do think him and Charlie Puth, like I said, they sort of tend to release albums and singles around the same time as each other. And so they're sort of fighting for chart slots. I think maybe this is the person that has stolen something from Robin, be it a number one song. I don't know if Andy Grammer has any number ones. Keep Your Head Up might have been, but I think he might have a Grammy or two. And if that's the case, maybe it's in a category that Robin was also nominated in. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's who I think it is. And I think I don't know if he will win it all, but I think he should. All right, up next was Pearl. I was surprised that she did not go home. This was by far for me the worst performance of the night. Possibly because I thought it was a bad song choice. Her country twang did not quite gel with this song for me. But she said, "Love Songs is my recent soundtrack because I've been helping my daughter plan her dream wedding." And so we heard from her new son-in-law. He said there was no scarier moment than asking Pearl for her daughter's hand. I even chickened out the first time. She's tough to crack, and I get it. She raised her daughter all by herself. We see a big wrench at that point, like a mechanic's wrench, and she can hitch a trailer better than anyone I know. And then we see a cassette that said the word movie on it. And then she sang Your Love by The Outfield. I gotta say, it wasn't a good choice for her vocals. I just don't think it blended well, and I love that song. But look, the guy who sang for The Outfield has passed away, so I apologize for not knowing his name. But he had this incredible register that the Pearl just doesn't have. She's definitely good in her lane, which is country music. Maybe that leans into the pop sort of genre as well, but Your Love, the guy from The Outfield had a very, very specific timbre to his voice. All right. And so Nick asked her, why she picked that song. And she said, really, it's covering the soundtrack of my life for the whole rock genre. That one was for the Pearls. Now, of course, this one's for the girls is a Martina McBride song, so maybe she was trying to throw us off her scent, try and get us to guess Martina McBride. But nobody bit on that. Robin thought it might be Bonnie Tyler, who we've not heard before. Rita thought it might be Winona Judd, which we have also not heard before. And then Jenny said somebody else who we've not heard this season yet, Brandy Carlisle. It's interesting. I mean, these people have been all over the map on Pearl. Shania Twain was one of the original guesses for her. But we've also had Sheryl Crow, Trisha Yearwood, Kelly Pickler was my first impression guess. So I don't think it's any of these people. I believe it is Gretchen Wilson. I don't know too much about her really. I keep saying that. I guess I should look her up at some point and to see what else she has other than Redneck Woman and the album Here for the Party. The word movie on a cassette tape, was she part of a soundtrack in the late '90s when cassettes were still big? To me, cassette is more '80s because you have the mixtapes and everything. By the '90s, it was CDs. So I don't know. I mean, if it's Gretchen Wilson, she wasn't making music in the '80s, so I'm not exactly sure what that has to do with. Unless she did a song for a movie that takes place in the '80s, like Hot Tub Time Machine or something like that. That's possible, I suppose. But I will say Gretchen Wilson. All right, and then first of all, Brandy Carlisle is she's touring with Elton John, or not touring, but she's performing with Elton John all over the place. She just put an album out with Elton John. She is riding high. She is not doing this show, I can tell you that. All right, so finally we have the Mad Scientist Monster, and he said my soundtrack happens to be my wife's favorite. So we go to her in her mask, and she says, I'm so glad that he's made it this far, but secretly, me and the babies miss him. So there's multiple children here. And then we see a calendar that says summer break. She said, he keeps us safe and sound, and that is important to me. We see 4 knights on a chessboard at that point, 2 black whites and 2 white knights. She says, I was orphaned as a teenager and I became my own parent and protector. When I met Mad Scientist Monster, I didn't know how to be loved, but he was patient and wanted to help me rebuild piece by piece. So I helped him as his audience of one when he worked on his first hit single. And then he sang the Coldplay song, The Scientist, which is interesting because since she was talking about being sort of broken by her childhood and being orphaned. I thought maybe he would have sang Fix You if he was going to do a Coldplay number, but whatever. I mean, The Scientist is a good song, but Fix You, I think, really tugs at people's heartstrings, and I'm pretty sure that's been done on the show before. Maybe they have a rule where you can't repeat, but that can't be true, right? There's been people doing multiple. Well, maybe I don't know. Maybe no one has ever repeated a song on Masked Singer. That would be an interesting thing to look at. Let me know in the comments if you know anything about that. We've certainly had a lot of songs over the 13 seasons, but have we never repeated a song? That seems unlikely. All right, but anyway, Nick talked to him afterwards and asked him why he wanted to do the show and this song specifically. And the monster said, I wanted to do this because I'm usually a party anthem kind of guy. Of course, obviously, we have LMFAO is the big party rockers, party rock anthem. But this is definitely not Red Foo or whoever else. I forget who all was in LMFAO at this point. Red Foo, I remember, was one of them. All right. Gary LaVox was Robin's guest. I don't know who that is, but he said he's the lead singer for Rascal Flatts. I know who Rascal Flatts is, but I couldn't name them if I had a gun to my head. All right. Ken is next, and he said Kane Brown. Now, I am familiar enough with him. I don't really know any of his songs, I guess, but I know him to see him. And I feel like he's a little too young for who the Mad Scientist Monster is. Although I think Ken did say he was married. And then Rita guessed it might be Jelly Roll. And here's another one, like Jelly Roll is on such a hot streak right now. He ain't doing the Masked Singer. Let's come down from earth a little bit on that. It's not Jelly Roll. So my initial guess for this, I was guessing a baseball player for weeks and weeks. I guessed a couple of different ball players. But it's clear from the stories that are being told in these clue packages that this is Brian Kelly from Florida Georgia Line. I looked up Florida Georgia Line's discography and Brian Kelly's own discography to see if there was something about 4 knights or black white knight. Like I couldn't find a figure anything about chess unless he is playing in chess on Broadway, but I don't think that's come out yet. But they're going to revive Chess, that like 80s musical. I don't know. Now I'm off on a tangent, but there was a chessboard. I don't think Brian Kelly has anything to do with that though. So I really don't know. I don't know what these clues have to do, but he is married. I know that. And from all the clues before, I do believe this is from Florida Georgia Line previously, Brian Kelly. So there you go. The only of my initial guesses that has made it all the way this far is the Boogie Woogie. And hopefully he wins the whole thing. I think the top two, if we're gonna talk that, is probably going to be Boogie Woogie and Pearl. I think Pearl's been doing a great job. Mad Scientist Monster is pretty good, though. Not Pearl, I'm sorry. Coral. Pearl, get her out of here. I think she was the worst this week for sure. I mentioned that. But Coral is who I meant. I'm sorry. I would say the top two right now, Boogie Woogie and Coral. I could see maybe Mad Scientist Monster sneaking in there, but I think it's going to be between the two of them. And I think either of them deserves to win. They've both really put on great performances this whole season. All right, well, look, we've talked it to death. There are 2 more episodes of The Masked Singer for this season. Next week, we will have the semifinals. I don't know if we're going to be sending home 1 or 2. My guess would be just 1, because then they can do 3 people for the finale, have it be a big bloated 2-hour finale like they do. So we will see. But comment below and check out my other videos in the meantime. I just did my review for the series finale of The Conners. Also, I put up a review for what I think is so far the best movie of the year, Sinners. So you can check those out on the channel as well. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.